welcome to On the Air presented by AIRWAAV. I'm your host, Sydney Smith, and I'm here with Bobby Thompson, who is a professional strongman. He recently placed first as the America's Strongest Man while holding several world records and many other accomplishments. Today, we're going to be talking more about his journey and his experience with AIRWAAV. So, I'd like to start with how you got into strongman. I know you originally are from Germany. You moved over to Virginia after a while. So take me through how you got into the sport of strongman, if that was when you were younger, just really how that looked like.
Wow. So strongman, I've got kind of a cliche story. When getting involved with strongman, I was young in my early 20s. I had a kid on the way. I was a personal trainer. I was bouncing at 2 or 3 different bars a week there in town, and I was busy. And I've been a competitive athlete for the majority of my life. And dare I say, that's one of the few things I've been good at. Wasn't a great student, just wasn't that guy who had that brain. So shifting over, and then as athletics left my life, as a young adult, I kind of started to spiral. I was still working out, was very, very in shape. However, I didn't have any kind of competitive glue. And I didn't know at the time that was something I needed personally. And then on a whim, there were 2 guys that walked into the gym. Really didn't know each other too well then, but I was the resident strong guy, was a new guy. And they asked me if I would do this contest with them. And I was like, yeah. So I looked at this, and then I started buying some equipment that I needed to train with because nowhere had it. And at the time, I was allowed to keep it at the gym I was personal trainer at, which was a commercial gym. So they were very, 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 very understanding. Strongman's not something you want to do in a building you personally own because all it does is break things. So they were very understanding, which is great. The difference is I went and did this contest, and prior to going, there was a gentleman in my gym who everyone was kind of scared to talk to. He was a big old guy that would work out in his polo, blue jeans, and bike boots, and would drive back to his office job. He was an older pro that had been competing for a while and had recently left the sport. So we bounced together, oddly enough, and became friends. And he kind of steered me along my journey. And it's just been one thing right after another. I'd really like to tell you there was some big moment, but it was really 4 contests, and then my life was never the same again.
So did you do a sport before strongman?
I did a multitude of sports. I'm pretty sure every kid played soccer when they were young. Like you either did soccer or t-ball. My parents made me do soccer. That didn't go too well. It didn't last very long either for obvious reasons. So I played soccer for a little while. I played baseball probably the longest. I played football for a little while. I had to stop that pretty early on though. Didn't really get to explore that career fully. And then I wrestled for a little bit, and then the last thing I did before strongman was I competed in powerlifting for a few years.
So you had a good base there and maybe a little competitiveness within you before you started strongman.
Yeah, no, I was an odd kid. I was always an athlete, but I was a terrible jock. Like I was a weird kid. Like I was a good athlete. I mean, I was 6 foot tall, 225 pounds as a high school freshman. Like coaches were licking their chops. It was great, but I was also the kid who would rather take pictures than go hang out with all the guys after practice. Like I was a photography kid as well. So
Oh,
I
really?
was, great
Wow,
athlete, terrible jock. Yeah.
that's funny.
Yeah.
That's kind of surprising. Now I feel like
So
you'd be like that guy in high school or something.
not at all. I was bad news in high school. Um, I was kind of the golden boy, and then kind of had some crappy stuff happen at home, and I mean, I looked like a grown man. That didn't help my situation at all. So I had older friends, I had early experiences, and then when I had to stop playing football, I was 16, so I was a sophomore. That's when things kind of went kind of full on rebel. Bobby started paying less attention in school. Working out and training took up all of my time. That was the one thing that kind of always stayed constant. Like I wanted to go read books, wanted to continue to get bigger. And then I just noticed early on with that alone, I had a huge propensity to get strong in terms of kids my age. Most of most of the guys at the time didn't know it, but I was training with their dads at the gym I was going to. Their dads would get off work, and we were all working out together. And there would be
That's
scenarios
great.
where they would see me at high school football games taking photos for the yearbook. Oh, Bobby, I didn't know you took pictures for the newspaper. I would stare at them, and then their son or daughter would walk up and go, "Hi, Bobby." And they would look at me like, "How do you know?" Like, and that's when it would happen. And it was like, but
That's so
again,
funny.
Well, by that point in time, I had a mustache. I was 6 foot tall, 260 plus pounds. Like I was, it looked weird looking like the kids that were wearing football pads just standing on sidelines taking photos. Like that
What year
was,
was that in high school? Or
so
all
I
throughout?
graduated. So I was, okay, so I was a sophomore when midway through August of camp, my sophomore year is when my feet kind of really, dare I say, shit the bed. That's when things went really bad. And that's where kind of football career ended. I had aspirations of playing pro. I wanted to go play college ball. Um, but so once that happened, that's where things started getting a little squirrely for Bobby Thompson.
What do you think drew you to the sport? And even before, like you were talking about how you wanted to be stronger, like all your time was dedicated in the gym and in the training. Why do you think that is?
Um, I'm going to say this, understand, I was never hungry as a child. I always had clothes on my back, but my house was not a peaceful place. And I didn't exactly fit in with the rest of my family necessarily before things got bad. And then things got really bad. So I could drive to school, and then after school, as long as I was at the gym, my parents didn't care where I was. And I would just get so in depth and so involved. And then you toss in like, I mean, I was going to play Division 1 or 2 football. That's what I wanted to do. Everything I was doing was devoted to that, and then it's gone. So that early in life, when you've assigned a goal, that is what you are. If you play in the band, I am in the band. If I am going to play football, I'm a football player. I wasn't a multi-sport athlete at that time because I had decided football is going to get it all. And
Yeah.
then it's stripped, and then you no longer have an identity. And I'm sure, like every other pissed off kid, I grabbed the first thing that I showed any sign of being good at, and just I got lucky. That's what it came down to. I just got really lucky.
So you came out of school and then that's whenever you started Strongman, right?
So not at all. So I graduated high
Okay.
school in 2011. I didn't start strongman until probably about 2000. My daughter's born about 2014, I believe. I'd have to go 2013, 2014. Before then, I went and got my associate's degree at a community college, but I was just kind of floating around. I was like, oh, I'm good at working out. Let's go be a personal trainer. And I was like, okay, well, then I did that. I have an issue where if I'm going to do something, I need to be the best at it, or I need to know I can't be the best at it.
Yeah.
There can be no question. So I very quickly started drilling all my hours into that and then got a job, and it was great. I was at the gym open to close, but then I hit a ceiling. I'm like, okay. And then I started bouncing. Like, so I'd been bouncing since I was 18. At that point, I'm 21, 22, still bouncing. Okay, well, I'll go get another job. And just everything I kept trying to do to add that glue, just that stability, that support, and nothing I added worked. And then luckily, Jordan Pepper was his name, walked up and said, hey, do you want to do this thing with us? And it was a small show in Richmond. I did it. And then that gentleman who I had met through bouncing, I'd been introduced to, after that contest, he walked up to me and he's like, okay. He's like, do you want to do this for real now? He didn't come with me or anything. He just waited at the gym and waited for my text. I was like, what do you mean do it for real? Like, I just want, like, I am for real. And he goes, no. He's like, do you want to go to World's Strongest Man? And I was like, that thing we all watch on TV? And he goes, yeah, when we were kids, probably around Christmas time. I was like, yeah. And he's like, well, I think you can do that. And that was the first time somebody ever looked at me and said that, or said, hey, like, that's a thing that not many people can do, but I think that's something you can do. And
So do you
it
think
just stuck.
that's the moment whenever it clicked and like turned in your head and you were like, okay, this is what I'm going to do, or at least try to do?
100%. That's when, because in that moment, this guy was all, his name is Zane. He has a full-time job. He's a civil engineer. Every week, I was getting Microsoft Excel sheets of workouts we had to complete throughout the week. I was getting nutrition. And granted, it was as scientific as we knew how to be at the time, which wasn't very much so. So I won't tell you what we did out of fear of lawsuit and God knows what else. But here was this guy, he didn't know me from Adam. Like, I mean, let's be honest, we punched people in the face together. Like, we bounced together. That's what we had done. He didn't know me from Adam. And then he starts drilling all this time. I mean, he's coming in on his lunch break. He's staying late on his lunch breaks and going back to work late so he can train with me longer. He's helping me go pick equipment up. He's finding me different ways to make a little extra money, helping me go to different bars that pay me more for my time. So and then he drove me to Florida for a contest that I like completely sunk the boat with, and didn't ask. All I had to do was get the hotel and the rental car. But that's for where we were. That's a 14-hour drive for a man who works, you know, 55 hours a week, and he's got a
Yeah.
family at home at the time. So it was when he said it, and then when I turned around and realized this guy's right now, he's dumping more into this than I am, and then it just became a switch. It was like, okay, we're gonna do it.
That's a lot for him to do, but I bet from your standpoint, it was really encouraging to have someone that has so much going on being willing to invest the amount that he did and just like the belief in you, I feel like backs up, even if you did have that spark from when he said that, or maybe you enjoyed that competition, but just that belief, I think, pushes you a little bit more to be like, oh, maybe I can do this.
So, and that's I've said it before on a few different podcasts and in front of all my peers at contests that, I mean, because he doesn't have social media. Like, he's
Yeah.
not out on social media. He's not super social. He's a quiet guy like I am. He lives in the middle of nowhere in his house on his 40 acres. Like, so when we come to contests and everybody's staring at this big bald tattooed guy, well, who's that? I'm like, well, without him, you wouldn't know my name. And that's kind of, and he didn't realize that's what he was doing at the time. He saw a kid who needed help, I
Yeah.
think. And I think he
And he
saw
saw something
somebody, he
in
saw,
you.
yeah, I don't know what it was, but he saw it before I did.
Well, he was right because now you've accomplished a lot. You keep moving up the ranks, and even this past year, getting first as the America's Strongest Man in 2023. So I feel like you're on your way to what he saw a long time ago.
I would agree. Very, very much so. It's definitely a way for him to finish his dream that was left undone and then to help me accomplish mine.
What do you think your favorite thing is about the sport thus far?
Thus far, you know, if you look at the world of strongman, there's a few of us that make a living. Now, the ranges of living that we make is it's very different. Like, we have Brian Shaw, who you can look up his net worth if you want to. There's a whole lot of zeros behind it. Then you have guys like me, who I'm 30 years old, looking at buying a house next year. Just moved my fiance and her son across the country into a decent apartment and a nice place. My car's paid off. My finances are set. You know, if one of my best friends calls me and says, "Hey, I need $1,000," okay, cool, no problem. How do you want it? So that status, and to be able to sit and breathe and say, my family is fed, my friends are fine, and I know that if today goes to hell, rent is paid. That is the most important thing and probably the best thing that's ever come out of this sport for me, because I don't know where else I would have gotten that from.
Yeah. With that, what do you think, or can you share a memorable moment so far or a personal achievement that stands out?
Hmm. I can't. The Arnold Classic 2021. That was there was a lot happening in that one. Uh, Injuries going into that contest. I was a reserve call up, which meant, hey, when initial invites went out, we'd like for you to be a reserve. And it's kind of like, you're going to come no matter what. You're going to pick some stuff up, test the equipment for the guys. Nobody pulls out of the Arnold Classic. You don't do it. Like, if you can breathe and you can walk and you're relatively okay, you don't miss the things it takes. And 2 days before that show, I got the final, like, hey, you're competing when you get here in 2 days. And it's just like, oh, okay, well, yeah, I've been training, but the exhaustion that comes from a training prep, the mental exhaustion, the up, the down, the back, the forth, looking at the news, seeing if the Ukrainian athletes are even going to be able to get there, because is that my opening? And at the same time, you're not hoping when your friends gets hurt. But ultimately, that's what happened. But I got to show up as a reserve and take third place after, her name's Liz Chalet. She's my coach's wife, and they do their prediction videos. And she had me towards damn near bottom of the list. And for me to step in, take third, slay some giants,
That's
that was
crazy.
it was the first big one. Like,
Yeah.
it was the first big one. It was the first time everybody looked at it. It was the first time I was one of the guys. I wasn't the guy, but I got to be one of the
But you were up
guys.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. At that point in time, as far as most people were concerned, I was the third strongest human in the world. And that means a lot. I think in today's society, men and women, just physical ability and strength and moments where people have overcome because of just the grit and what they could make happen, I think we lose those things. So naturally, when you become one of those people, when you win those contests, and then people find out that you got a completely ruptured distal bicep tendon and a proximal bicep tendon that's no longer attached, and this, that, and the other, and then they look at you like you're some figure, you're Samson or Achilles or whoever it was, and it's just they go home and now they can accomplish those things. So now I've become someone Samson. I've become that Achilles figure. They're going to think back and go, oh, that time Bobby ripped his bicep off and finished. Like, okay, no, I'm going to go do this. So
Yeah.
that's one of those figurehead moments.
I bet that gave you confidence to continue on in your career, and you're talking about making a livelihood from doing this, because you didn't know what else you were going to do otherwise. How do you find the balance between training and making this your livelihood and everything else going on in your life?
There, there is no balance. That's kind of the interesting part of all of this. So, I have a daughter, and then I have my fiance's son, who will become my stepson. And there's a very real thought process that has to occur when you're doing something like this. And a lot of guys don't have it with themselves, and it holds them back. You get guys that will get good at strongman, but they can't quite make the jump to get to a big show. And then you guys get the guys who make the jump to the big show, but they can't get out of like the bottom 3 or 4 positions. And then you get the guys who start taking podiums. And it's like, okay, so now there might as well be the Sahara Desert between all of those individuals. Now, guys have bad days. Shit does in fact happen. But in terms of the athletes that can look at their kids and go, you're going to go to college, you're going to have the car, we're going to have the house, I got to miss this baseball game. Or, like I was at World's Strongest Man for my daughter's first day of kindergarten. Like, I'm not getting that back. So for me to look at these moments and go, or, my fiance, Corey Butler, recently had her second bout with cancer. And during her first and second ones, I had to go compete. So like I'm talking to her on the phone and we're talking about these, and she's in South Dakota. And for me to be able to say, I have to go do this now, I have to win. I have to win or I have to make the money. It has to make sense. Because if it doesn't make sense, I'm just some loser sitting on a couch playing a child's game. That's the difference between strongman, being a man, making it work, or being a woman and making it work. Because there's a few women out there in our sport who I feel are within 2 or 3 years of being able to do this full time. It's coming for a few of them. But that's the difference. Like you have to be able to make that decision of I'm going to miss this and I'm going to bank that it's going to be worth it for my kid. And if you can't have that conversation, your time's limited in the sport.
I bet that puts a lot of pressure on you just because there are these much bigger things, and it might even give you more of a drive to be able to work harder even when it gets mentally draining, mentally tough, in whatever aspect that may be, because it's not just for yourself, it's for your family too.
100%. At the Shaw Classic, I tore my left arm. I call it my Nemo fin because that's the arm I've got the fully ruptured distal bicep tendon. The proximal tendon, one of the proximal tendons is gone, and then I've tore my brachialis below the elbow now. Going into the Shaw Classic, I thought I had developed carpal tunnel in my elbows. Wasn't the case. And then on the first day, I ended up ripping off that brachialis below the elbow, peeled off the bone a little bit. And then going into the next day with limited hand use, and of course our last event, the last event's a medley that has something called a power stair in it, which is the last portion. And it's a series of steps, and you have to pick up a block of steel or lead or whatever it is and take it all the way to the top one step at a time. Well, the last one was 600 pounds. I mean, I couldn't see the veins in my hands. My fingers looked like sausages. Like I'd already thrown up. Like just, it was
Oh
done.
my
But
gosh.
I just knew at that point that the difference between 1 or 2 positions, we're talking thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And when it comes down to the wire at a show like that, we're all hurt. We're all injured. It's the end of the year. But it's going to be the guy who can hurt just a little bit longer. So you're right. In that situation, yeah, like that was all just Owens in South Dakota. We're going there next. We're getting the U-Haul. We're bringing it back. Charlotte's waiting on this. softball's coming around. Okay, cool. Like, this is going to hurt, but it's going to be okay. And I don't regret it, but yeah, there's just some things you got to have something greater than what you're doing, or you're not going to get the job done.
Yeah, I would completely agree.
Mhm.
With that, what do you think your long-term goals are in the sport?
My long-term goals in this, well, I have one long-term goal in the sport, and that's to exit the sport, not in a wheelchair. That's
That's a good one.
you're you're laughing, but a lot of times strongmen don't exit the sport exits strongmen. Like, it just, yeah, we are forced out. I would like to go out on my own terms, and then I've already kind of started my next step in process with business, and right now Strongman is supporting that and pushing me that direction. So long-term goals is just to get out the same condition I came in. Now, in terms of things I would like to accomplish on my way out, I would like to be able to look back and simply say, okay, like, I either was the best, or I know for a fact I was not capable of being the best. Like, that's really what it comes down to. And it'll be this adventure, it'll be my next adventure, it'll be the adventure after that. When I can answer that question, we're good.
So to take it back from a different perspective, when you were first starting, is there any advice that you would have given yourself when you were first starting out in the sport, I guess from any different perspective?
Um, any advice I would tell myself wouldn't be advice. Words, maybe some words of just, hey, it's gonna be all right. Like, there's gonna be a lot of really, really bad stuff that's gonna happen. But you just gotta stay tough. It's gonna be cool. Strongman's gonna make it all work. I would do that. But in terms of like, hey, don't do this, no. Now, even with all the shitty bars and the bar fights and things I can't talk about here, obviously, and then the health scares that occur, no, there can't be. There can't be an advice to give, because then I might not be here.
Yeah. All of those different events, whether they were bad or good, really set you up for success here and made you who you are. So maybe
Oh
there's
yeah,
no regrets with that at all. It really set you up for where you are.
exactly. It built character.
I would say so, yes. It always does.
Yes, ma'am.
So when you're preparing for all the competitions, do you have any strategies or something, a form of preparation that you take in your training that helps you do better?
Hmm. I have certain things I will do leading up to a prep. Now, it's an interesting position for athletes that compete like I do and that get invites to all the big shows, the majority of the big shows. There is no real off season. And there are also some, I don't want to say smaller contests, but not Super Bowl contests that happen in the in betweens. And when you're approaching this as a business, your goal is to make as much money as you can. Like, that's what you have to do. So it really depends on the year and what my contest expectations are. For instance, last year I competed 12 times, I believe 12 times. So, I mean, I was on a plane every 4 to 6 weeks. Until October, I was not home longer than 8 weeks. So that year, it was just a constant. I cut a lot of things out of life. There weren't very many pleasures. I didn't have a TV. Like, a lot of times, like, my social media access was just for strongman. Talking to people was completely cut off. I started ordering my groceries, so I didn't have to leave my apartment when I didn't have to. I was like, everything came in. I had a cold tub at the gym. So I would go train. I'd get my cold tub. I'd take a hot shower because, it was the beginning of the year getting ready for the Arnold at that point. And I would come home. If I don't have contests so packed in tight like that, I do try and maintain some level of leisure. So in terms of a process, it's the same process I live every day. That's kind of the interesting part, because if you ask somebody who has a 9 to 5 job, hey, what are some things you do? Like, when a contest is coming up, well, they have to actively change their schedule. I mean, I don't. Like, I have set myself up in a sense that I can do all my work from my apartment. I will go outside. Obviously, I'm not a total hermit, but my life is that of somebody who just wants to be as strong as possible.
Yeah. So you keep routine, basically.
100%. Yes.
Okay. So do you What is one performance or recovery hack that has been important to you as an elite athlete?
So when you get to a certain point in anything skill and athleticism based, you start hunting for 0.1% and 0.5%. And if you're lucky, you get a 1%. And these are all little things from sleeping an extra hour, eating a little bit more. The last big 0.5% I've gotten has been from AIRWAAV, actually. Now, it was really kind of cool because AIRWAAV actually came to me right as I began a major weight loss or middle of the process. So I was beginning to I coined a term earlier this year, rebuilding the weapon, reshaping the vehicle. So having something like AIRWAAV for somebody like me who has sleep apnea, which when you're awake, you wouldn't think would be a problem. However, the reason I have sleep apnea is because I have a naturally small airway to begin with. So, and I have, obviously, we have a small airway, your tongue's normal size, which mine is. Okay, great. That's not going to play so well. So having something like AIRWAAV come along that actually did what it said it was going to do and itself didn't inhibit my breathing, pinned my tongue down, and then stayed out of the way. That was the biggest thing. It stayed out of the way. And I had never been a grinder of my teeth, so I had never really considered a mouth guard. They'd all either been too big or just gotten in the way. I didn't want to take it out, put it back in, and I started biting down. Well, now I started biting down going into the Arnold Classic. I couldn't turn my neck to look at the blind spot in my car. Something just wasn't right. We couldn't get everything to relax. And then all of a sudden, my traps let go. And I was seeing a specialist 2 or 3 times a week. And he was working on me. And he's like, okay. He's like, we're moving around. He's like, what are we doing? This feels great. And when you're working with a specialist and you're an athlete like me, it's burning the candle at both ends. So all you're doing is just trying to slow down the candle burn. Well, he starts noticing noticeable progress. He's like, turn your head. And I was like, I know. I'm like, it's great. I was like, I can look at I don't have to use my rearview mirror now. I can turn and look over my shoulder. And we started talking, and he's like, you're clenching your jaw. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, you're bracing your traps with, you're bracing your traps with your jaw. It's all connected. He's like, you're biting down, you're bracing, your neck functions. He's like, this is interesting, but it's evidence suggesting AIRWAAV actually does what it says it's going to do. Now,
And
I can
coming
get
from a
really,
specialist too.
yes, a medical professional. Like this was noticeable, and he was in charge of all my recovery. That's the only thing he didn't have his hands in. Well, he wasn't for it, wasn't against it. He knew I was using an AIRWAAV mouth guard, and he's like, okay, cool, no problem. But he had not changed what he was doing because it was the only thing that was getting us relief. And then all of a sudden, again, my traps relaxed, my neck started moving, my shoulder mobility got better. I find myself getting injured less, I'm more involved. It seems having the ability to apply pressure, which biting down on a mouth guard eventually becomes slightly uncomfortable. It's supposed to be. It's protecting your teeth. However, having that level of discomfort for me while I'm trying to cue myself, it helps me focus. I'm involved. It's just one more element that keeps me in the moment. So
Yeah.
AIRWAAV, I'm very impressed.
So in what lifts do you implement AIRWAAV or are you using it across the board?
I wear it for my warm-ups, which is, it's it's ab and adductor squeezes, it's planks, it's rear delt. Like it doesn't come out of my mouth. I don't have a reason to take it out. I start warming up, I pop it in, I can drink my water, I can talk with it in, I can drink a protein shake with it in. Obviously I'm not going to eat with it in, so but that's the funny part. And for somebody like me, I'm a dude, if I put it down, I'm gonna lose it. Like it doesn't. I was so thankful that AIRWAAV sent me so many of them because I've lost 90% of them. Like open up, put it down. Where is it? It's gone. And that was my other issue with mouth guards is they were all so big. It was uncomfortable. I couldn't breathe with them in. I take them out. You put them down. So I'm not going to spend $30 on another mouth guard. Like it's the third one this month. Like I'm good.
Every week.
AIRWAAV. Yeah, it's horrible. AIRWAAV. I have no reason to take it out unless I'm done training. Like I can, but I just have no reason to.
Yeah.
There's nothing I can't do with it in.
That's great to hear. I'm glad you really like it.
I am. I'm very impressed. A few of my clients are using them. Hooper and I actually talked kind of about AIRWAAV and the science of it and what we thought. And because I was familiar with the science of mouth guards and why they allegedly worked. And so it's really cool that AIRWAAV they didn't reinvent science. Like AIRWAAV didn't discover something, but what they did is they went and innovated something.
Yeah.
So when you hear people and they're skeptical and it's like, oh, well, actually, I'm like, well, no, actually, orthodontists were trying to do this like 30 years ago. It's here in this medical journal if you want to dig back. Like it's not This is nothing new, folks, but we've just
Yeah.
made the car better.
And then now you're like one of the people reaping the benefits from it, from science that's backed up, or we have all the research behind it too.
Exactly. And is it limited? Sure. Sure, you can say that the science is limited. However, I'm an elite athlete. I'm chasing 10%, half percents, and 1% increases. Like that's what I'm after. And AIRWAAV is far into the 1% increase.
Yeah. Okay, so you have the log press record right now.
Yes, in America.
Yes, in America. So let's just use that for example. When you put the AIRWAAV mouthpiece in, how are you able to tell a difference if you're doing log press?
So this is a really cool one. So when I hit that log press record, which was 478 and a half, I was 370 pounds. So I hit that log, and then leading up to the Shaw Classic, I actually hit, I believe it was a 463 at 318 pounds. Now, did my AIRWAAV cause me to hit almost equal to that record, which was 50 or 60 pounds heavier? No, it did not. However, being at a lighter body weight, okay, and being able to brace more effectively, stay more involved, protect my neck, I can train at those loads, I believe, more frequently versus being when you lose weight, generally the volume in which you can train at, that becomes less and less as you get lighter and lighter, simply because there's not as much of you and the thing weighs too much. You don't have as much cushion.
Right?
AIRWAAV has, and again, I've lost weight and had to fight for those numbers without AIRWAAV present. So to tell you exactly what it does that aided in that, it would be difficult to say, but if we're looking at what happens in a log press from the very beginning is you are bracing, picking it up and having to roll it up your body and stay braced in a position where you cannot expand your lungs. And being able to bite down on something versus try and blow your stomach out or force your lungs under more pressure, it makes it a lot easier not to go night-night.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's a deep dive if you want to take that one, but we'll be here for a while.
How do you like AIRWAAV differently? Because you mentioned using a different mouthpiece before.
Mhm.
How are you able to see that you like AIRWAAV more than whatever those other mouthpieces are?
So I've used several different types of mouth guards. I've used standard, just buy it off the shelf for football, your no name from Dick's Sporting Goods. I've used styles that cover both the top and bottom of the mouth, and then they've got the slit in the front, which you breathe through. And then I've used a thinner mouthpiece, which I actually sent off my jaw mold. They molded it, sent it back. All of these have one of three things in common. They're either so small that I don't know why it's there. It's just annoying and it's not doing me any good whatsoever. Okay. They are, well, a football mouth guard, which best of luck. I mean, I didn't like that when I played football because your feet thick. It's like, dare I say, it would be like dropping a millennial on a stick shift and saying go. Like, it's just not going to go well. So, and then we have the ones that take the top and bottom, which are the multi pieces. There's just too much going on. Like you've got stuff between your teeth and between your teeth, between your gums, pushing your jaw out of alignment. For me personally, you're limited by how much air you can actually get in based on that little itty bitty slit in the front. Okay, well now we have AIRWAAV. Puts your tongue out of the way. It's just thick enough. You feel like you're going to cushion your teeth, and you can trust it. And it sits on the lower jaw and pushes the lower jaw forward. I was like, which oddly enough, if we look at science, lower jaws are moving backwards on average in terms of position on the body. Like that's not something we want happening. That's actually a
Yeah.
leading cause of a lot of breathing issues. Well, AIRWAAV is pushing the jaw forward. So is it going to correct the issue altogether? No. But we have several anatomical issues we've highlighted that now are no longer a problem.
You shared a lot of reasons of why you like AIRWAAV. For someone who hasn't tried it at all before and are a little bit skeptical about it, what would you say might be the biggest reason as to why they should try it?
Because I am a skeptic as well. I am a numbers guy. I don't like maybes. I'm the first one to wave the bullshit flag. And when AIRWAAV was first offered to me, I knew what it was. I'm like, okay, it's another mouth guard. Let's see. Like one, the people were great. I will say that you guys that was nice. All of you guys I've worked with at AIRWAAV so far have been fantastic, from Jen
Thank
to
you.
your marketing specialist to yourself. So that helped your cause. But as somebody who is a skeptic as well, go buy the AIRWAAV hit mouth guard. If you don't like it, you don't like it. But dental is expensive. And I've cracked a tooth before. I've got one or two missing towards the back, and I'm going to tell you guys that this is a lot easier than going to an orthodontist.
And cheaper.
Yes, significantly so.
A lot
So
cheaper.
if you are skeptical of the science, that's totally fine. But you can't deny the fact they're more likely to crack a tooth without a mouth guard than with one.
Those
So
are all great points.
Yeah, that's a reason to try it, if anything.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear you're liking it, you're enjoying it, and you're able to see all the benefits in your training and in competition. And I'm excited to see what you do this next year too. So I'll be keeping up.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
That's all I have for us today. So thank you for joining me. I really enjoyed hearing about how you got into Strongman and just more about your story in general.
Nope. Thank you, Sydney. It's been a pleasure.
Of course. See you later, Bobby. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, that's all for today's episode of On the Air. Thank you all for listening, and thank you, Bobby, for joining me. Be sure to stay tuned for our next episode, and don't forget to purchase your own AIRWAAV mouthpiece if you want to break your best and unlock your full athletic potential. Drop any questions that you have about AIRWAAV in the comments, and see you next time.